Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and in a change to our usual programming, today we're going to be... So that just about wraps up our little... So that just about wraps up our little retrospective look at my... shit, damn and blast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the dingy corner that is my desk, and in a change to our usual programming, today we're going to be having a bit of a retrospective. I say retrospective because I actually built this thing 2 years ago. I actually started it many years ago, but completed about 2 years ago. So as you know from the title of the episode, this is from The Christmas Carol. It's the 11th Doctor's Lash Up phone. Now this is a really simple prop, and if you were to make it in one bash, it would probably take you about 2 or 3 days, possibly a little bit longer. So this ticks all my boxes. It's a Doctor's personal prop, it's something he built himself, and it's a lash up. It looks junky, and that is effectively what it is. It's just a load of junk stuck together. Now, when we're building something like this, the first thing we want to do is go and get a load of reference images so we know what we're building. Now ordinarily the BBC would put out photographs and all sorts of other references on their website, but strangely enough this prop has never been seen anywhere. It's never been in the exhibitions, it's never had photographs of it published in any of the magazines. So what else could I do? Well, invariably the BBC do put concept art on their website, and they didn't even have that. The closest thing I got to concept art was the concept work that Big Chief, the people who do the little 6-scale dollies, they did do a 11th Doctor dolly complete with this as a little accessory, and they had some artwork, and to be honest it looked nothing like, and at the time when I was building this that was the only thing that was available. Other people who were also building these things or having a stab at it were using that sort of artwork as their basis, and I just thought at the time, why bother using that? It looks nothing like the final prop. Anyway, as it happened, just after I completed building this, I did come across the BBC's original artwork, and let's be honest, it was nothing like, and clearly that's what the Big Chief had based theirs on. So, what happens with concept art is quite often you'll have two types. You'll have one that says this is what it's going to look like and we need it to be this and this, and the props makers will go off and make it. But quite often you'll get a piece of art that says, okay, this is what we want, something that looks roughly like this, with this sort of thing here and there, and they basically leave it to the discretion of the prop builder to go away and make something in that vein. So anyway, no concept artwork, no photographs. The next best thing was to go over to, I think it's a website called the Tragical History Tour. They have loads of photographs and screen caps from the episodes. Now, for some reason I never saw the entire episode, I just saw the beginning. So I knew this only appeared in the beginning, so I went and grabbed all of their images that they had where you could see this prop, and I put them into one great big mood board. And on that mood board I made my little notes, and I'm sure around about now I'm actually putting this up on screen, so if you want to pause it, pause it. But it's a relatively simple build. It's just one object here with some wire wrapped around it, and underneath that wire some components. They're there and some junk here, and that is literally what this thing is made out of. It is junk. Now, the perceptive among you will notice that this thing here must be a light, and you're right, it is a light. It's a reading light. This one here is one that I bought at the time. In fact, I bought this years and years ago because I collect lights anyway, so they're useful things. They're good to light your way, but also they're good for parts. Now, this was the one that I bought. You'll notice it says King of On here. King of On aren't the people who made this. King of On have just branded this. Whoever does make this, they literally make these things up and send them out to other companies who then distribute them under their own brand name. Now we're in June 2017 at the minute, and Tesco's have these in stock. They are a bit pricey. This was £1, so I bought loads of them at the time. But in Tesco's right now you can buy these for £4. So if you have plans to replicate this prop, get yourselves down to Tesco's if you're in the UK. So how did I go about building this? Well, obviously I started off with the book light, but the next option that I had to consider was, do I try to find the exact identical parts that were used on the original prop? And while I could identify from my reference images quite a few of the components, like this one here for example, goes from there to there. That's a connector off of a laptop. I'm fairly convinced that's what it is. To try and find the exact one would really have taken way too long. Honestly, where am I going to find it? I'd have to go to eBay and look for bits or look for scrap parts from various places. So I thought, so long as I can make this look accurate without using accurate parts, that is really all that matters. So the option I chose to take was to replicate all the parts from scratch, because going down that route I could do it far quicker. I could have this built in literally a couple of days. To try and find the original parts, it will just mean weeks and weeks, if not months, if not years of searching. And I like it, but I don't like it that much to make a project literally last 5+ years. So I elected to build it. So in doing so, I literally just broke it down into sections. I wanted a lump there, a lump there, a largest lump here, and something here for the earpiece. Now, the very first thing I built was this earpiece. It looks a bit dark on this, but actually it is chrome. It is just dark in here. This was built from literally scraps. This here was 2 bits of offcut tubing that I used for many years ago for building a Cyberman, a classic 80s Cyberman, and it was a 1-inch tube and a 3/4 inch tube, so putting those together, cutting them into thin slices and putting them together, squashing them in, gave me a greater wall thickness than just the 1 inch on its own. With that greater wall thickness I could round off the edges. This section here came from my son's toy moped. It's just some little, I think it was 18th scale toy moped. So this is the wheel. There's the wheel, the tyre would have been on this, and here's the brake assembly inside it. So I took it all apart, put it back together again, but in the wrong order. Quite often when I've seen other people building this, and it's one of those details that's easy to miss, this earpiece is actually sat on a base of some sort, and what I've done here is try to replicate that. It sort of looks like a guitar plug. Whoops a daisy, I went a bit off camera there. That's the trouble with this setup. I don't have any monitor, so I'm doing this pretty much blind. What I was actually saying is, quite often when I've seen builds, a lot of people tend to miss this little detail here. It's like a little, it looks like in terms of its form, a plectrum, but much thicker. So I decided to cut this from, I think it was 2mm plastic. Just checking I'm in frame, I am. 2mm plastic with a little notch out up at the top, and then moving down to here, this was again just junk. It was scraps of styrene that I cut into a tube, made a little plate, and then the rubber piece. Again, all plastics, and just winging it, making sure that it did look how it was meant to look on screen. I also found some old contacts as well. Now, obviously, you've got to wrap and bind all this stuff up, but before you do that, you need to paint it. You couldn't just assemble this then paint it, because then you're in a world of pain, because you'd have to mask all sorts of stuff off, and it's just not worth going down. So really what I did was to paint the individual parts separately before they were all glued together and before they were bound. The main body of itself, that was, I mean, it's all automotive spray. This was sprayed in a bronze metallic, I think it was. Over the top of that I had some gold acrylic, which I just dry brushed on because there was clearly a lot of dry brushed gold going on the prop. This main construction here, that was brass, and then of course you've got your blacks and your silvers and what have you. I was quite proud of this little bit here. Can barely see it, but I even put the little screw holes that would have held this entire unit into the laptop. So once all the individual elements were painted up, it was now time to assemble it. Now, I could have just superglued everything together, but that wouldn't have been very strong. And I do suspect that part of the reason why all this stuff was wrapped around it was A, to make it look good, but also B, to hold it all together. So this is actually a combination of superglue and the copper wiring. Now, this copper wiring is 1mm copper from Hobbycraft in the UK. It came from their, I think it's their jewellery making section. And all of what you can see here, I think, is about 3 to 4 metres worth, which is a lot. I mean, when I bought it, I think, yeah, it must have been 4 metres, because I had to buy 2 packs, and it would have, yeah, well, that makes sense, 2 metres in each pack. And I thought that was way more than enough, but it wasn't. That was the full 2 packs pretty much, with a little bit about that much left over. So most of the wrap was fairly easy to do, but this section here was just time consuming because you had to be quite accurate about it. Once the whole thing was assembled, I then started to put things like the wires in, these wires. In fact, these wires, mainly here and there, and oh, actually there's only 2 wires, if you don't count that one. Those actually came from the Dapole Doctor exhibition from a different prop. But they were all just glued and sort of wired in. And then after that, it was a simple matter of weathering. Now the weathering was a very simple, straightforward, inky wash. I think it was acrylic. And I just brushed it on quite liberally. I think I used Mars Black, Burnt Sienna, and was it Yellow Ochre? It might have been Yellow Ochre I used. And then once all the general weathering was put in, I added in some little scratch marks here, little dings and dents with silver paint. Again, that was acrylic silver paint. I have to admit, I really don't like additive scratches where you paint your silver onto. I prefer subtractive, where you would paint the whole thing silver first, mask it off with masking fluid, paint your colours on top, and then remove the masking fluid, and that shows the silver underneath. To me, that's more convincing. But for something like this, that isn't what I would call a hero prop or a top drawer prop. It was good enough. So, yep, added in my additive scratches, and then over the top of that, I just took neat black and neat brown and flicked them individually with a toothbrush all over it, just to make it look a bit more used and weathered. So effectively, that was the build. It was really, really simple, relatively straightforward, easy to make, and the only thing is, for some reason I started with this, and then I think I did the little plate underneath, and then didn't do anything for a few years, and then came back to it and finished the rest off. But as I said earlier, if you want to make one of these, it should take 3 to 4 days if you're going slow, but you could knock it out in a couple of days. And into the dingy cabinet of doom it goes, with all the other crap where it will never be seen again. Thanks for watching.